Chapter 39. I go back. I tell the genuine history of Christianity. The very word Christianity is a misunderstanding. In truth, there was only one Christian, and he died on the cross. The evangel died on the cross. What has been called evangel from that moment was actually the opposite of that which he had lived. Ill tidings, a disangel. It is false to the point of nonsense to find the mark of the Christian in a faith, for instance, in the faith in redemption through Christ. Only Christian practice, a life such as he lived who died on the cross, is Christian. Such a life is still possible today for certain people, even necessary. Genuine, original Christianity will be possible at all times. Not a faith, but a doing. Above all, a not doing of many things, another state of being, states of consciousness. Any faith, considering something true, for example, every psychologist knows this, are fifth-rank matters of complete indifference compared to the value of the instincts. Speaking more strictly, the whole concept of spiritual causality is false. To reduce being a Christian, Christianism, to a matter of considering something true, to a mere phenomena of consciousness, is to negate Christianism. In fact, there have been no Christians at all. The Christian, that which for the last 2,000 years has been called a Christian, is merely a psychological self-misunderstanding. If one looks more closely, it was, in spite of all faith, only the instincts that ruled in him. And what instincts! Faith was at all times, for example in Luther, only a cloak, a pretext, a screen behind which the instincts played their game, a shrewd blindness about the dominance of certain instincts. Faith, I have already called it the characteristic Christian shrewdness. One always spoke of faith, but one always acted from instinct alone. In the Christian world of ideas, there is nothing that has the least contact with reality, and it is in the instinctive hatred of reality that we have recognized the only motivating force at the root of Christianity. What follows from this? That in Psychologicis too, the error here is radical, that it is that which determines the very essence, that it is the substance. One concept less, one single reality in its place, and the whole of Christianity hurtles down into nothing. Viewed from high above, the strangest of all facts, a religion which is not only dependent on errors, but which has its inventiveness and even its genius only in harmful errors, only in errors which poison life and the heart, is really a spectacle for gods, for those gods who are at the same time philosophers and whom I have encountered, for example, at those famous dialogues on Naxos. The moment nausea leaves them and us, they become grateful for the spectacle of the Christian. Perhaps the miserable little star that is called Earth deserves a divine glance, a divine sympathy, just because of this curious case. For let us not underestimate the Christian. The Christian, false to the point of innocence, is far above the ape regarding Christians. A well-known theory of descent becomes a mere complement. Chapter 40. The catastrophe of the evangel was decided with the death. It was attached to the cross. Only the death, this unexpected, disgraceful death, only the cross, which was generally reserved for the rabble, only this horrible paradox confronted the disciples with the real riddle. Who was this? What was this? Their profoundly upset and insulted feelings and their suspicion that such a death might represent the refutation of their cause, the terrible question mark, why in this manner, this state is only too easy to understand. Here everything had to be necessary, had to have meaning, reason, the highest reason. A disciple's love knows no accident. Only now the cleft opened up. Who killed him? Who was his natural enemy? This question leaped forth like lightning. Answer: ruling Jewry, its highest class. From this moment one felt oneself in rebellion against the existing order, and in retrospect one understood Jesus to have been in rebellion against the existing order. Until then, this warlike, this no-saying, no-doing trait had been lacking in his image. Even more, he had been its opposite. Evidently, the small community did not understand the main point, the exemplary character of this kind of death, the freedom, the superiority over any feeling of resentment, a token of how little they understood him altogether. After all, Jesus could not intend anything with his death except to give publicly the strongest exhibition, the proof of his doctrine. But his disciples were far from forgiving this death, which would have been evangelic in the highest sense, or even from offering themselves for a like death in gentle and lovely repose of the heart. Precisely the most unevangelical feeling, revenge, came to the fore again. The matter could not possibly be finished with this death. Retribution was needed, judgment, and yet what could possibly be more unevangelical than retribution, punishment, sitting in judgment? Once more, the popular expectation of a Messiah came to the foreground. A historic moment was envisaged. The kingdom of God comes as a judgment over his enemies. But in this way, everything is misunderstood. The kingdom of God is the last act, as a promise. After all, the evangel had been precisely the presence, the fulfillment, the reality of this kingdom. Just such a death was this very kingdom of God. Now, for the first time, all the contempt and bitterness against the Pharisees and theologians were carried into the type of the Master. And in this way, he himself was made into a Pharisee and theologian. On the other hand, the frenzied veneration of these totally unhinged souls no longer endured the evangelic conception of everybody's equal right to be a child of God as Jesus had taught. It was their revenge to elevate Jesus extravagantly, to sever him from themselves, precisely as the Jews had formerly, out of revenge against their enemies, severed their God from themselves and elevated him, the one God and the one Son of God, both products of ressentiment.